Mr. Chairman, the meeting is back live and the meeting is also unlocked for others to rejoin.
Thank you. We're back in case number 9666. Counsel for U.S. Wind has concluded his non-public cross-examination of the witness. We'll now turn to counsel for Office of People's Counsel to begin his cross-examination. Mr. Fields.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Kane, I want to actually move to a different spreadsheet, and this is labeled Skipjack Exhibit 10C-OPC 2-37 Attachment 1. It's confidential, but I'm going to only hit some very high-level points about it. Just to set that up, I think we heard at the very beginning of your testimony, you're a consultant for a firm called Bates White, correct?
That's correct.
And you just went over in confidential session your analysis of the ratepayer impact. Now, that analysis uses a energy and capacity market forecast done by a firm called PA Consulting, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Which is actually Mr. Repsher for U.S. Wind actually used a projection from the same firm, correct?
He's a member of PA Consulting Group. Yes.
Oh, okay, that's right. Thank you. Okay. Now, the spreadsheet that I mentioned is the PA Consulting projections of market prices that you worked from, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe I'm looking at the right document. Yes.
And it is dated July of 2020, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so it wouldn't incorporate any information that was released or occurred after July of 2020, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And since July 2020, there was a PJM capacity market auction for 2022, 2023 delivery year that occurred in May of 2021, and the results were released in June. Is that correct?
I'm not sure about the exact dates, but yes, that sounds right.
Okay. Now, 2022, 2023 is before these plants begin operation. So the ratepayer analysis would not incorporate that time period, but that but there are in the projection that is in that workbook we're talking in the PA Consulting workbook we're talking about. There are figures for the capacity market in 2022 and 2023, correct?
I believe that's correct, yes.
Okay. Well, it's in the record. We'll just leave it at that. Similarly, PJM released a new forecast for 2021 in January of 2021. Well, what they call the PJM 2021 load forecast was released in January 2021. Are you familiar with that?
That sounds right, yes.
And that would not be incorporated into that PA Consulting forecast, correct?
That particular forecast would not, yes, that's right.
Okay. And that workbook would incorporate natural gas and RGGI price forwards from sometime, or would work from natural gas and RGGI price forwards from prior to June 2020, correct?
Yes, and that frankly is almost a totally different world than what we see right now.
Okay. Let me actually, while I have you, could you just, I used the term forward. Could you explain what I meant by that?
Sure.
And hopefully that will be what I actually did mean about it.
Okay, sure. Yeah. Well, forward prices are uh, traded power forwards. Typically, we're talking about electricity. We're talking about the future delivery of electricity, and forward prices are for a delivery period in the future. So it's a quote now for a delivery period in the future.
All right, that's great. Thank you. Changing topics. I'm sorry, effective load carrying capability, ELCC. Could you just briefly describe what that is?
Yes, I'll try to keep this in a digestible form, but the load carrying capability. So each generating resource, each supply resource, is evaluated by, say, PJM, by the regional transmission organization, for how much they contribute to supporting reliability, and that's really meeting load when needed. You have to be able to do it very quickly. You have to have reliable resources. You have to have some sense of, is this a resource that breaks down a lot? Does it produce only some times of the day? And so the load carrying capability is a measure of each resource's capability. It's supposed to be a more sophisticated calculation of the contribution of a resource to meeting reliability needs. It has still some debatable aspects about it and to what resources it applies. I think currently ELCC is generally considered to be a concept applied to intermittent resources like solar and wind, that you can't just turn it on and off the way you can a gas-fired plant. So the focus has been on renewable resources in the application of that concept, but it actually has a broader significance as well. You could apply it just equally to a nuclear plant, to a gas-fired plant, to any resource, to try to evaluate what does it really contribute to the system.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that. And what's your understanding of how the ELCC values for intermittent resources will be affected as more of those intermittent resources are added to the system? So maybe to make it a little more straightforward, as more wind resources are added to, say, to the PJM system, what's going to be the impact of that on the ELCC values for each particular resource?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And I don't want to get too much into the weeds in my response, but I do think that there is actually a relevance to this point, to the methodologies that have been applied in the analyses that are being advanced on for these projects. There was a long and hot debate in PJM and before FERC about what is the appropriate ELCC methodology for evaluating resources. And the debate was, essentially, should it be an incremental ELCC value, or should it be an average ELCC value? And the incremental value changes significantly over time. The incremental value, apparently in California, as an example, California is awash in solar generation. And I've heard knowledgeable people say that they're just at the point where incremental additions of solar generation in California have near zero reliability effect on the system. So what that, translate that into this ELCC terminology, you would essentially have zero ELCC value assigned to on an incremental basis to those resources. But taken as a whole, the solar resources provide huge reliability value, and that would be the average ELCC value. So whether you're talking about incremental or average, it makes a distinct difference. And in PJM, there was a hard-fought battle about it. PJM advanced the average concept as opposed to the incremental, and FERC accepted that. And that's what's going to be in place going forward. And that's why we heard yesterday, I think, or maybe it was this morning, that the ELCC values for PJM for offshore wind have actually increased relative to what was assumed, for instance, in the ICF modeling. ICF assumed 27% at the very beginning of the OREC period, falling to 21%. It now looks like PJM has assigned a class average of 30% and possibly as high as 35% ELCC value, which would increase the capacity offset benefit of offshore wind in our analyses. And so I don't want to belabor this point too much, but this goes to the question of, do you evaluate an increment or do you evaluate an average? And ICF's methodology, and to a certain extent, US Wind's methodology, evaluates the effect on the markets on an incremental basis. And I discussed this in my testimony. It's a very important distinction. And it's similar to what you see in California, where incremental capacity is evaluated essentially at zero. But on average, you get huge value from these resources. And it just depends on how you do the assessment. PJM and FERC have decided that average is appropriate, even though the market monitor in PJM said incremental is more appropriate. So, these are issues that have very significant effects in the result of the analyses that we're considering.
Thank you for that. But to focus on my question, you've described what PJM has done with the methodology that's in place, and how that impacted the numbers here in the near term. But my question was, as whether you're doing it incrementally or on an average basis, as more resources are added to the system, wouldn't that have the effect of lowering the ELCC value for all of the resources in that category?
I think it's fair to say that is true, and I just want to clarify that PJM is not. It would be especially true if you evaluated them on an incremental basis, and in PJM they're not evaluating it on an incremental basis. They've proposed, and FERC has accepted, this average ELC methodology. So the effect will be substantially reduced of the phenomenon that you're describing, where incremental additions have lower value over time. Later additions are assigned a lower value. Because you're doing it on an average basis, you're moving the average very slightly, as opposed to if you're just evaluating on an incremental basis.
Okay, thank you for that. But just to follow up on something you're doing, when my understanding of the PJM, just to follow up on that answer briefly, my understanding is that resources under the PJM system are not guaranteed an ELCC value for their lives. That ELCC value can and probably will change as the system changes over time. Is my understanding correct?
Yes, I would absolutely agree. There's no guarantee.
Okay, so right, that's great. I think that's just check for 1 minute here. That's all the questions I have. Thank you very much, Mr. Kane.
Thank you.
Mr. Spivak, I want to go back to you. Any cross?
No, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you. We'll turn to commissioners. Commissioners, do you have questions of this witness? Commissioner Herman.
Hello, Mr. Kane. I think it's afternoon now, so good afternoon, and thank you
Good
for being
afternoon.
here. I appreciate your testimony. I do have a data request that we will be, and it's directed to both companies, but it would affect your testimony. We'll be sending that out sometime later today. It's an attempt to do a comparison of the bids from both companies on an equal basis, as you said, nominal dollars, that kind of thing. I'd like to try to make sure that we're getting the comparison correct. It's a comparison using tables from the ICF report from Exhibit 7 and also exhibits, I believe, which is the ratepayer impact test, and then the exhibits 56 through 61, which are the economic impact tests. So we'll be sending that out later today. I just wanted to let you know that that was coming, and that will be going to both of the applicants. So just based on your testimony here today, you've said that when you were talking to, I think, Mr. Fields or Mr. Previs, I apologize, I don't recall which, but you said that the benefits will extend beyond 20 years, which is the OREC period. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So how long are you anticipating that the project would continue to provide benefits to customers without OREC payments?
It's not an assumption in my analysis. As I said, we're constrained by the wording of the statute to do our analysis within the bounds of the OREC period only. But based on the way these types of resources operate, I would say that you've got another decade at least beyond, and that would the potential continuation beyond that decade would depend on a decision about possibly refurbishing the facilities. So I mean, these are very obviously these are big projects. They take a lot of effort to get in place, and getting them out is a big part of the process. So I would imagine that there would be a lot of value in taking advantage of those towers and rewiring the turbines or putting new turbines on, and that an additional 10 years would be a reasonable assumption, but with refurbishment investments, it could be considerably beyond that.
Okay, and have you done any estimate of what the annual benefits to customers would be of that, say, extra decade?
I have not. I think in the walkthrough of the spreadsheet that I did with Mr. Priebus, that what we show is that there is substantial value in later years on a net basis, and that value would continue forward. You could look at that spreadsheet and look at the energy and capacity values going forward. REC values go essentially to zero in that later period, but you'd still get big energy benefits.
Right. So I know that the OPC witness, and I think you talked to Mr. Fields about this a little bit, said that the fact that you did the study using data that was a year older than the data that was used by ICF and US Wind, how does that impact an analysis when you're looking at a 20-year forecast?
I think it has a very modest effect. I do think, though, that it's important to consider recent events, and I think that the difference between an analysis that was concluded a year ago or an analysis that was concluded 6 months ago, things change, and the most notable change since over the last year is that natural gas prices are now substantially higher than they were. And I think it's fair when assessing the reliability of the ICF analysis is to look at the energy prices that they're projecting. They're projecting energy prices of $24 a megawatt hour in 2018 dollars and flat over a 25-year period effectively. And forward prices, for power delivered to the DPL zone in 2026, as of yesterday, are $32 on that same basis. It's 25% higher. If you wanted to secure power now, go to the market, buy a forward for 2026, you'd pay $32 a megawatt hour. ICF is evaluating wind projects at $24 a megawatt hour. I don't have any particular fault with everybody has to make assumptions, and you anchor your assumptions, and you run your model. But the issue that I have is that the ICF model is giving you a very low value. We have real world market actionable data which shows that their prices are too low now. And the risk of relying on a very conservative analysis of that type is that valuable projects don't get approved, they don't happen, they don't get built, and you don't get benefits to ratepayers.
Okay, thank you. So I noted that in your, I believe it was your rebuttal testimony, that you studied the impact of approving the Skipjack 2.1 and the US Wind Bid 1. Is that correct?
Yes, as a combination.
Did you study the combination of Skipjack 2.1 and US Wind 2?
I have done that since that time. In my rebuttal testimony, I restricted it to 2 cases and excluded the bid 2. At that time, there was some question about the technical adherence to statute of bid 2, so I did not do a combination. I've since done that and shown that the Bates-White model would show that combination passing as well.
Can you provide that to us?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you. So you also said in your testimony, and Mr. Curran, let me know if I'm hitting anything confidential here, but you said that you would still pass the test if the growth rate were at 0. Do you have the numbers that the ratepayer impact of that passing the test at 0?
I don't have them in front of me, but that's certainly another thing I can provide.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you very much. All right, now, Mr. Curran, I'd like to ask about the ratepayer impact numbers that are in Mr. Kane's testimony. I don't think they're confidential, but you tell me if they are.
They're not, Your Honor.
Okay, all those various cents that have moved around a bit, not
Correct.
confidential. Okay. All right, Mr. Kane, explain to me how we started at 21 cents, we went to 8 cents, and now we're at a negative number. What are the factors that contributed to those changes?
Well, I'll address the first 2 numbers. The negative number was the final year. I think that when are you talking about what Mr. Priebus pointed me to in our work?
Well, I was also talking about your rebuttal testimony at the very end. Let me, very end.
Commissioner, I believe it's page 25.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
Page 25 of your rebuttal testimony.
Sorry, I'm awash in paper here. Just one moment.
Take your time.
Which numbers are?
So, page 25.
Page 25, table 3.
Oh, yes, I see that. Okay. Yes.
All right. Your Honor, I think the numbers themselves are confidential, but you can ask him how he got to the numbers.
I apologize for saying them out loud because I thought you said it was okay to ask about the numbers.
Commissioner, I don't think you actually said them out loud yet.
No.
But I
Okay.
think, yeah, if we could talk about the numbers without specifying them, I think we'll be able to get your responses.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how we got from one to the other to the next. 3 times.
Sure.
I got 3 different numbers. I'm trying to figure out how we got those, where we got those.
I understand the question. I think we can address it without numerical references. So the errata to my testimony, which revised the net impact results, reflected a correction to the Bates-White model. and it was a correction to the porting in of capacity prices provided by PA Consulting. And so our model, when we checked after my direct testimony, but prior to my supplemental direct testimony, we identified that the units, the Bates-White model was essentially treating the prices from PA Consulting as if they were in dollars per megawatt day, and that's kind of the standard price reference for the PJM capacity market. But the numbers were in fact reported in dollars per kilowatt year. So the correction was to the formula that calculated value from those numbers. So anyway, the capacity value went up is the bottom line in the model. It was not a result of a change in the forecast. It was a result in a correction to the treatment of those prices. So that is that would have been true for any particular evaluation. So the original Skipjack 2 and original Skipjack 2.1 evaluations would have shown lower net impact results after the correction.
Okay.
So in reference to table 3, that is reporting on the combination of Skipjack 2.1 and Marwin bid 1. So there's no, I mean, that's a beast of its own. It doesn't have a comparison because no other version of that combination analysis has been presented.
Okay. All right. So the difference between the first two numbers is capacity value.
Yes.
Okay. And all right. So I have a lot of tabs here. Some of the questions may have been asked, but some of them weren't. So looking at table 2 in your direct testimony, and I'm not going to ask about any of the numbers specifically, but I assume it's okay for me to just talk about the categories.
Yes. Yes, Your
Right,
Honor.
thank you. So the way and I think this has to do with your discussion with Mr. Previs, the economic, what went into the economic impact were the value added for construction and O&M, the emissions cost. Do I have that right?
I just want to. I think it's worth talking about this to be clear. So there are 2 separate statutory requirements. I guess you could say 3 if you count both tests. But one is that there are net benefits, and so
Yeah.
this table in aggregate is demonstrating the net benefit, but a subcomponent feeds into the rate impact assessment, and the components which feed into the rate impact assessment are energy market revenues, energy price reductions, capacity market revenues, and avoided tier 1 REC payments. So it's sort of the middle of the table. Are we talking about table 2? I'm sorry.
Yes.
We are,
Yes.
and
Okay.
that was my understanding, and I just wanted to make sure I had that right.
Yes, that's correct. So the environmental benefits are not included. The economic impact numbers of construction and O&M are also excluded from the rate impact assessment.
Right. Okay. Just wanted to make sure.
Okay.
And then when I go down and I look at table 3, and there's that total number there.
Yes.
See that number?
And that is
Does
public, Your
that
Honor.
number tie into table 2 if it does? Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. I'm just trying to understand how all these numbers work together, if they do in fact work together.
Yes, it's a totally reasonable question. So I Yeah, so what I'm thinking is that probably the values, you see the challenge here is that we may be able to clarify for this if you would if you would like. There is a distinction in that we're reporting in table 2, reporting an NPV value. So it's a net present, it's a discounted value across the OREC period back to 2020. And in table 3, it's reporting real dollars, but it's not on an NPV basis. So I apologize for that being a little less than clear, but there is a connection. It's just that they're reported in slightly different ways. Table 3 is it reflects the impact, the economic impact analysis that is captured in table 2. It's just that it's reported in different numbers. It's table 2 is discounted and table 3 is not.
Okay, thanks. Would that be the same explanation when I looked at table 6 on page 9?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct. And there's a bigger difference, and so you can think of the construction phase as being much closer in time to us, so there's a lower discounting, but the operating phase stretches out 25 years into the future, and so there's a bigger reduction when the NPV value is calculated.
Okay. And then if I'm looking at table 7, and there's a number, there's a dollar figure associated with table 7 just on line 14 there.
Yes.
Right. And if I added up all of these emissions cost, would I get that number?
Yeah, to be clear, table 7 is volume. It's reported in.
I get that. I'm looking at the number underneath. I assume that the volume numbers are associated with the dollar figure there.
Yes, that's right. The volume numbers are valued in dollar terms in the model, and they sum those values sum to the number reported in the text.
Okay. All right. Again, just trying to tie numbers.
Sure.
To numbers there. All righty.
Shoot. Sorry, my screen has gone out again.
We can still see you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I can see you and hear you.
Okay, that's great.
I'm good.
I've just lost my computer screen. So if you make any hand gestures, I'm not going to be able to see that.
Well, presumably I won't. I don't usually, or at least not while my video's on.
Technology.
Okay. Your talk on page 12 of your supplemental direct about carbon pricing assumptions.
Yes.
All right, and you assume that there will be carbon prices by a particular date. I'm not sure if that date is, if that assumption is confidential.
Yes, that is the carbon pricing assumption that was reflected in the PA Consulting production cost simulation. In other words, the energy price forecast reflects the carbon price assumptions summarized in figure 3.
Okay, and did ICF also include carbon prices at the same time?
I'm not sure what their assumption was. I'm not sure if they report that explicitly, and I did not see those numbers. But I do know that the CO2 price assumptions have an effect on the projected prices in the modeling that we used in the Bates-White model. So, what we see is ICF's numbers are entirely flat across the entire OREC period. So if they incorporated any CO2 prices, then they didn't kick in this way, where we're assuming that later in the OREC period, some quantity of CO2 pricing occurs, and that has an effect on increasing estimated energy prices after that period.
Okay, so it's your assumption they didn't based on their flat pricing.
Yeah, and I don't want to say categorically because I did not confirm that, but if there are any CO2 price assumptions incorporated, they would have to be very low, and they would have to be essentially constant over the period
Okay.
by inference.
Okay, thank you. All right, lots of questions about the growth rate, so I can skip those. Moving on. Sorry, I'm just leaping through all these pages here. So I think you talked a little bit about this with Mr. Fields. Does your analysis of the impact of the wind projects on market prices, does that include any assumptions about what might happen in New York or New Jersey with respect to additional wind resources?
Not directly, and so I'll just describe in very summary terms that we have this underlying energy price projection that is produced using the production cost simulation model, and that incorporates a variety of assumptions about renewable additions over time. And so, to the extent that that modeling incorporates assumptions about renewable additions, then that is reflected in our analysis. The regression analysis is producing a percentage change that is then applied to that energy price projection. And so, by extension of the fact that the renewables are reflected in the energy price forecast, then my methodology captures that. I can't say whether and to what extent any specific projects, the quantity of ocean wind or any other coastal projects are reflected in the production cost simulation. But I know there are substantial quantities of renewables assumed in that modeling.
Okay, thank you. My final question is, you mentioned that OREC prices stay the same throughout the 20-year period, and that I think you effectively said they can't change. But isn't it within Skipjack's ability to enable some flexibility to OREC pricing?
I wanted to clarify that there's a distinction between a cost estimate and then the benefit estimate, and that the cost estimate is, whatever it is, it's right now it's an offered price schedule, and if it's approved under the current process, then that schedule would apply over the entire OREC period. I can't really speak to what flexibility there is. I think we heard yesterday that that interconnection cost is a very substantial portion of the OREC cost estimate because it's a real cost that will be borne by Ørsted. And it sounds like there's at least some conceptual flexibility. If that burden is removed, then the OREC price would be could be modified.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Kane. That's all I had. I appreciate your testimony.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Mr. Kane, I only have one question for you, and if we could go back to your rebuttal testimony to page 25, table 3, which we looked at a little while ago. I'm not going to make reference to the specific amount regarding the residential impact of the combined projects.
Yep.
Assume we have a positive number for that amount. That number would be the amount that is borne by an average residential customer on a given month. What would a negative number yield?
So on an average basis, you know, on 2018 dollars per megawatt hour, it would say that there is more benefit in terms of the energy, the capacity, the energy price effect, and REC offsets on average over that period than the cost of the OREC.
So that would not necessarily mean a credit to ratepayers.
Well, on average, it would mean a net reduction in cost. Whether you characterize that as a credit, I mean, basically it would say that the energy that they pay for is less expensive, and then there's a separate. I don't know how the billing it works in Maryland, but if there's a separate OREC line, you know, that if that OREC line hadn't been there representing a cost, then the cost of energy would have been higher for the customer.
Okay, so a negative amount would result in a benefit to.
It would be a net benefit with all of these factors considered.
Thank you, Mr. Kane. That was my only question of you.
Sorry, I had one more. I apologize, or two more. Sorry, I missed the report, the revised report. Sorry, Mr. Chairman. You want me to wait, or you want?
Oh
me
no,
to...
please. I was finished. Back to you.
I apologize to my colleagues. Okay, so I have two questions based on your exhibit CC-1R-C, and I think I can ask them without confidential session. I'll just not talk about the numbers. Okay, so looking back at table 2,
This
you
is
have a number under.
Sorry, 1RC.
Yeah, your
Okay.
you know, your cost benefit analysis that you submitted in response with your.
Yeah, I got it.
Got it?
Yep.
Okay, so on table 2 there, that's the capacity issue you were talking about, and it went up. It's like 3 times as high as what was in table 2 of your direct testimony.
That is correct.
Okay, I don't think that's going out of the ballpark because we didn't talk about the actual number. All right, so the last question I had is on page 20 of your cost benefit analysis, the revised one. And there's no numbers in this discussion. So, and I already asked this question anyway. You use the word looking at, are you on page 20?
Oh, you know what? I'm confused here. I've got page numbering at the top and at the bottom, and they're different.
Sorry. Page 27 at the top.
20. Okay.
27 to 34.
34, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. You say that you are assuming higher retail sales growth because it represents a plausible electrification scenario.
Yes.
All right. Tell me what you mean there by plausible.
Well, I've put a lot of other words around this conceptually, and but I think for the sake of your interpretation, that treat plausible as more likely than not. I think that
51% or 75% or
well,
somewhere in the middle.
You know, so I think that there's a bit of a challenge here, is that we have a lot of forces at play that determine policy and the trajectory of how successful we are in meeting climate challenges. And so, you know, in sort of pithy terms, if we're going to assume a future in which we all survive, then I'm going to be somewhat optimistic about the fact that we achieve these these policy objectives, that we achieve decarbonization, that we achieve the reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, and that we succeed in meeting the statutory directives for the addition of renewables, including offshore wind. So if that world is going to be a real world, then you're going to have to decarbonize through electrification. I've provided some references that demonstrate that that's really what's going to be required. So, I think that if you say, what is the policy in place now, which is going to require electrification at this rate, I would have to respond that there is none that demonstrably requires that result. But if we're going to meet the directives to decarbonize, to reduce emissions, and if we're going to be successful and we're going to meet the statutory intent, then I think that this is a very reasonable assumption. This is essentially a requirement for achieving that. So I would like to demote the word. I would demote the word plausible. I would say that it's, in fact, I would even prefer something like necessary. That it does require action. It does require policy action. It requires the action on the part of individuals. But if we're going to get where we need to go, then this is the world we're going to be living in, and that's why I think it's an appropriate world in which to evaluate these resources.
Thank you very much, and I apologize again to my colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Mr. Kane.
Good afternoon.
This whole discussion is admittedly for me a very esoteric discussion, and if you've covered this in different terms, I apologize ahead of time. But could you tell me how your analysis treated PJM capacity bonuses and/or penalties with regard to the projects, and how ICF did that, how they treated that?
Our analysis does not explicitly distinguish the bonus and penalty components of the capacity market. It assumes a capacity value and a clearing price in the capacity market and a capacity qualification percentage, and that's carried through the analysis. I'm actually not sure what ICF did in their analysis. I know that US Wind reported the PA Consulting report that is connected to the rate impact test lists the bonus and penalty components. That was not an explicit element of my analysis. The analysis essentially assumes, I guess you could say that if there's a offset of penalty and an upside of bonus, that you would, I essentially assume those away and assume that you're getting your full qualification volume and you're getting your clearing price as projected forward.
Thank you for that clarification, and we'll ask the other parties with ICF, and we'll have an opportunity to ask US Wind as well. So thank you for that, Mr. Kane. I appreciate it.
Okay. That is about the most arcane component of the capacity market that you touched on. So the less time we spend there, the better, I think.
Commissioner Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Kane, for going through this. It's been, I think, a pretty thorough conversation, and but I just want to make sure I understand just a couple of things that you said. Again, we are being, asked to potentially substitute the ICF analysis with your own. So let me just start with some of the OPC questions. I think Mr. Fields asked about the ELCC. As you know, we don't have the only project that's being considered right now. In fact, New Jersey and Virginia's are much larger. So you said, ELCC is going to be done on an average, but won't the average be, reduced quite a bit if all these projects do in fact come on the market? And does that have a material impact on your calculations that ultimately
lead to the ratepayer impact?
Yeah, it's an important question. In my analysis, I carried forward a 27% qualification volume, so 27% of the nameplate capacity is considered when valuing capacity going over the OREC period. ICF started with 27% in the first 1 or 2 years, maybe, and then it drops to 21% over the period. US Wind, or PA Consulting on behalf of US Wind, assumed 27% across the period. And then subsequent to everybody's analysis, PJM revised the LCC class average percentage for offshore wind to 30% or 35%, depending on the year. So the revision to the ELCC methodology, just taken in isolation, increases the offset value that should be applied. And I haven't reflected that change in any of my updated analyses. We're still applying a 27% value across the period. I agree that it's not a guaranteed volume, and I also agree that it's dynamic, that it depends on what happens going forward. But it also, there's an opportunity for the individual project to demonstrate project-specific ELCC. So it depends on where you are. It depends on where you're injecting power. It depends upon your locational pricing zone for the capacity market. There are a number of different elements. I think the news, such as we know it about ELCC, is that the offshore wind projects should be assigned a higher value than has been applied in any of the analyses that you've seen. I think that the dynamic component of it is uncertain, and it's not clear to me, just off the top of my head, that New Jersey would necessarily affect the ELCC value with respect to the local pricing zone applicable to the skipjack project. It could, and all things being equal, and if you had a copper plate transmission system and you had one capacity pricing zone, then over time your ELCC for any given category would presumably decrease with increased quantities of offshore wind being added.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And that is, I guess, my concern. It is a dynamic number, and as Mr. Fields described, with the increasing amounts of this intermittent resource, it is very possible, maybe even likely, that the ELCC could be reduced. And it seems like that is an important revenue component to your analysis. The other I just want to understand, I'm specifically right now looking on page 10 of your rebuttal, and I'm just looking at the chart, your estimates of what energy prices, the future energy prices, are going to be in over the period of this project. And you have the highest projection. I mean, your increases are higher than both Skipjack and the ICF. And if I understand correctly, that is an important element to the revenues that these projects will bring in, which will lead then to a reduced ratepayer impact. Is that correct?
Yes,
that what you're arguing here?
Yes.
Okay. Then you go on to the economic analysis, that energy price reduction effect of Skipjack round 2 projects. And then again, considering all the other projects that, New Jersey and Virginia that may also come online, you would expect that there have this countervailing price reducing effect on energy prices. Is that correct?
Yeah, and so I had responded.
Because of the zero resource, production.
Yeah, that's right. So I'd responded to a question from Commissioner Herman about the fact that the underlying energy price projection incorporates assumptions about zero cost renewable additions over time, and so that is baked into the price. And I think this figure one.
So you're assuming that the higher projection in costs already assume all these projects, and that there has been this price suppressing effect, yet you still have the highest, projection of energy cost anyway. Is that?
Yeah, I think that, so I'd mentioned earlier that the the forward price that's comparable to the figures on this chart is now $32 per megawatt hour in 2026. It's higher than any of these forecasts. What you could contract forward energy for is already higher than all of these. And so US wind is actually the highest in the early period of this projection, and it's relatively flat. The later period of increase is mostly associated with the CO2 price assumptions that we discussed earlier.
Okay. Yeah, and just forgive me that I'll have to continue thinking about that, because the other analysis don't consider the price suppressing effect, yet they come in with a lower future cost projection. So that seems to be, again, an area where there's a big discrepancy between your analysis and ICF and US wind. And do you understand, or am I missing something?
Well, I think they all incorporate substantial volumes of renewable energy being added to the system over the next 25 years. And those are all baked into these energy price forecasts that you pointed to in figure 1.
But they're not looking at a price suppressing effect of these zero cost resources.
Well, that's a really important point, and I think it's important to grapple with that a little bit. The price suppression effects of all the other renewables, other than the offshore wind projects being evaluated, are baked into this energy price forecast. And then, based on the methodologies being applied by ICF and by US wind, they're looking at an incremental effect of changing one element. In the case of ICF, they swap in offshore wind in place of onshore solar. In the case of the US wind analysis, I believe that they are not doing that swapping, but it's still an incremental evaluation. So it's incremental to all of the other renewables that are already baked in to the modeling. And that's the methodological aspect of this that produces an especially low bound on the impact of offshore wind, of any particular offshore wind project.
Okay. And then I guess just kind of combine several questions, really. In the following pages of your rebuttal, you go through just a discussion about supply and demand, and how the supply curve is moved. And I guess this is based all around the assumption of the increased amounts of zero cost resources. But it also, there's a discussion about the electrification and increase in load. It doesn't appear to me that, you show a number of these figures with a movement in the supply curve. Wouldn't there be some impact on the demand curve that could be offsetting to your overall analysis that on the cost suppressing, the price suppressing effects of this electrification and zero resource?
Yep, they are definitely moving in different directions, but I want to emphasize, and I think Paul Hibbard touched on this a little bit, but maybe to expand a little bit on that question, is that the higher price you start at, you get more benefit from your added wind, because your higher price means there's a higher cost resource setting the price, and it can be pushed out and reduced more quickly. So if demand is higher, that you're further up the supply curve, you require higher cost resources to meet load. And so if there is electrification, and electrification, I should say, is only very modestly reflected in the underlying load forecast. It's a conservative aspect of our analysis. We don't include this electrification assumption in the underlying energy modeling. But if it were in at that level, you would be starting at a higher price point in the market. You would get more price reduction benefit from any amount of added offshore wind from round 2.
So if you move the demand curve more to the right because of increasing demand, or you bend it, aren't you hitting the supply curve at a higher point, and thus the cost is, the price is higher?
Yes,
it seems
that's
like,
right.
But isn't this supposed to be arguing a price suppressing effect?
Yeah, so the price suppression effect is solely from the movement of the supply curve. And wherever your demand curve is, I haven't tried to show a shift in demand because it would, the charts are already complex enough. The moving demand curve would create an even further complication. But if the demand curve were higher, then when you shift the supply curve, you come down faster. So that's why for any higher level of demand, you start at a higher price, you get more reduction in price from any addition of the supply, any shift in the supply curve out. It's a more rapid drop down the steep part of that supply curve.
Okay. We'll have to think on that too, because again, it just seems like if we're electrifying and the load is increasing, that demand curve should be shifting as well, which seems to be offsetting. But let me go back and read the transcript and your answer and see if
it requires some thought. I will not deny that.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Seeing no additional commissioners wishing to speak, we will soon break for our lunch recess. Let me ask the parties if they have any follow-up based on the commissioner's questioning of Mr. Kane.
Skipjack does not, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Previs.
No, Your Honor. Or OPC.
Thank you. Mr. Previs.
May I ask one clarifying follow-up to Commissioner Richards, just very recent exchange?
Yes, please.
Mr. Kane, you recall Commissioner Richards suggesting that a difference between the parties is that that you consider the price's suppressive impact, but the other parties didn't really consider much about the price suppressive impact. Do you recall that line of questioning?
I think I know what you're referring to. I'm not sure that accurately represents the conversation, but for the sake of argument, I think I know what you're talking about.
I actually wanted to give you an opportunity to clarify, actually, and the price suppressive impact is considered by all the parties, correct?
That's correct. We use different methodologies, and the methodologies applied by ICF and US Wind are necessarily produce a low estimate of that impact.
I wanted to make clear there wasn't that one party did do it and the other party didn't do it. It was that everyone did it. It was just a difference in opinion about what the impact was, correct?
All of the analyses incorporate some effect of the effect on energy prices, yes.
And so and again, just to go back to I'm not going to actually go back to the spreadsheet, but in the column where you're looking at price suppressive impact, your number is about.
I'm just going to object as outside the scope of Commissioner Richards' questions, but.
Sustained.
Okay, thank you then. If that's it.
All right, we will.
Questions.
No more questions. We will now take a lunch recess. Mr. Kane, you may step down. We will be on recess until 1:45 this afternoon, and then we'll start with witness Lang at 1:45. Have a good lunch.
Thank you.
No, that was me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
In approximately 1 minute, we will go back on the record. All right, we will go back on the record in case number 9666. I hope everybody had a nice lunch. Mr. Coran, are you prepared to call your next witness?
We are, Your Honor. We would call to the witness stand Dr. Corey Lang.
Thank you.
Everyone, I'm here.
Dr. Lang, if you could please raise your right hand and wait to be sworn in.
Doctor, do you swear and affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in the matter now pending is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Your witness, Mr. Coran.
Thank you. Dr. Lang, would you please state your full name for the record?
Ms. Corey P. Lang.
And what is your business address, sir?
214 Coastal Institute, 1 Greenhouse Road, University of Rhode Island, Kingston, Rhode Island, 02881.
Thank you. And who is your employer, sir, and what is your title?
My employer is the University of Rhode Island, and my title is Associate Professor.
Thank you. And who are you testifying on behalf?
On behalf of Skipjack.
Thank you. Dr. Lang, do you have before you one document entitled The Public Rebuttal Testimony of Corey Lang, dated October 18th, 2021, consisting of 26 pages and 2 exhibits?
I do. I have a printout of that in front of me.
Thank you. Your Honor, at this time, we'd like Dr. Lang's public rebuttal testimony, which was pre-marked and filed with the Commission as Skipjack Exhibit 13, to be marked as Skipjack Exhibit 13.
Marked.
Dr. Lang, was this testimony prepared by you or under your supervision?
Yes.
And do you have any additions, corrections, deletions, or clarifications to your testimony you'd like to make today?
No.
So if I were to ask you the same questions today that are contained in your rebuttal testimony, would your answers be the same?
They would.
And is your testimony true and correct to the best of your information, knowledge, and belief?
It is.
Thank you. Your Honor, at this time, we would respectfully move Skipjack Exhibit 13 into evidence.
Seeing no objection, Skipjack Exhibit 13 is moved into evidence.
And Dr. Lang is available for cross-examination.
Thank you. Mr. Collins, does U.S. Wind have any cross for this witness?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just brief cross-examination.
You may proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Dr. Lang.
Good afternoon.
I'm Carville Collins representing U.S. Wind. Thank you for being with us. Let me refer you to your rebuttal testimony that you filed in this case. In your testimony, it appears that you present findings of your own study on the effects of Block Island Wind Farm, followed by a review of other studies on impacts of offshore wind farms. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And at page 3 of your testimony, starting on line 5, you note that your Block Island Wind Farm study is the only academic study to assess tourism impacts of offshore wind facilities in the U.S. using what you call real market data. Is that correct?
That is correct. I see that written.
And is your use of real market data possible because what you were studying is an actual offshore wind farm, the Block Island Wind Farm?
That's correct. It's only possible in that instance.
And is it true that the other 13 studies that you reviewed in your testimony were studies that were based were studies of hypothetical offshore wind farms? Is that correct?
All but one of them. There was one other revealed preference study from Europe.
And instead of using real market data, these other 13, with that one exception, relied on stated preferences from survey respondents. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Let me ask you to turn to page 22 of your testimony. And beginning at line 19.
Okay.
You note that one of the 13 studies, the so-called Parsons and Firestone study, noted a break-even point at 15 miles, correct?
That is correct.
Can you explain for us the term break-even point?
Sure. The Parsons and Firestone study, in their hypothetical survey, they have many different respondents, and they show different respondents different hypothetical scenarios, and they vary the distance from the shore that the hypothetical wind farm is presented in the visual images. And they vary them from 2.5 to 20 miles. And what they generally find is that there are some large negatives in terms of stated tourism activity when the turbines are very close to shore. And those negatives decline as the distance gets further from shore. They also measure positives, people that would seek out a beach trip because there is a visible offshore wind farm at that beach. And so they have these negatives, people who would avoid the beach, and the positives, people who would go to that beach specifically for that. And what they find is at 15 miles, the positives start to outweigh the negatives. That's what they call the break-even point.
And is it correct that the break-even points identified in some of the other 12 studies were at distances less than 15 miles?
That's correct. I would like to note not all of those 12 studies vary distance. It's a subset, I believe less than half. I could get specifics, but less than half of the studies vary distance in that way. And those that do, though, yes, I would classify their turning point or when the negatives become 0 as happening before 15 miles. Is that happening closer to shore?
And you anticipated my next question. I was curious about that. Of those studies that did identify a break-even point that you surveyed within the literature, what is the range of distances in terms of mileage of the break-even points that you observed in any of the other 12 studies?
This is a two-part answer. the first part, to the best of my knowledge, the only study that finds sort of a break even in the same way that it goes from negative to positive is the Westerberg et al. Study out of Europe. There they find negatives at a very close distance and then a positive at just 8 kilometers. The effect of offshore wind becomes positive, and people are willing to pay positive amounts to see that wind farm. Now, I say that's the only one that finds this break even. The others, slightly more simplistically, just see effects going to zero, right? They might see, so an example would be the Landry et al. Study, published using North Carolina data. They find large negatives when the offshore wind farm is 1 mile from the coast. And those effects dissipate to zero when it is 4 miles from the coast in their hypothetical survey.
So I think what I hear you to say is in your observation of this literature, these distances vary. The longest distance seems to be 15 miles, and the shortest distance seems to be less than 15, and in some cases considerably less than 15. Would that be a fair statement?
Yes, in the stated preference literature, yes, that's a fair statement.
Thank you. Thank you again, Dr. Lang, for being here. No further questions.
The only additional party I see seeking cross is the town of Ocean City, Maryland. Ms. Parde, are you prepared to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but it does seem to me that exchange we just heard might very well constitute friendly cross, because I mean, the points that Mr. Collins was trying to make there seem to be something that would benefit his client as well as Skipjack. And in that reason, I think I would I think I would move that it be stricken.
You're Mr. Spivak, we can't see you. We can see the top of your head.
Sorry about that. That was my camera. But as I said, I mean, it does appear that was friendly cross.
Mr. Spivak, I tend to agree with you, so I will give Mr. Collins a ability to respond here. I did have instructions at the very beginning of this evidentiary hearing saying that parties on the same side of an issue may not engage in cross-examination. Mr. Collins, how do you respond?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and certainly appreciate the views of staff counsel. I think a careful review of the two applications will reveal precisely why I had these questions for Dr. Lang. Our proposed project, bids 2 and 3, are a little bit closer than 15 miles, whereas the Skipjack projects, both bids are proposing distances of something greater than 15, more in the vicinity of 20. So there is a difference. We certainly respect one another and each other's views, but in this case, if the line drawn as to this so-called break-even point would be at 15, that would be adverse to my client's proposed bids and not adverse to the proposed bids of our friends at Skipjack. So for that reason, I asked Dr. Lang to clarify those points.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Mr. Spivak, you did raise a good point, but I do recognize that the U.S. wind proposal would have these turbines a little further away than the Skipjack proposal. So out of abundance of caution, I'm going to deny your request, leave that testimony in the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Madam Prode, you may proceed with your cross.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is Elise Prouty on behalf of the town of Ocean City. And Dr. Lang, just to start, so following up on your literature review and the discussion about the break-even points, the majority of the literature you looked at did not involve studies of wind turbines that were greater than 14 megawatt in size. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And so when we're talking about a break-even point, the fact that the literature in their determination of those break-even points, they were using smaller size turbines, correct?
Yes, all of the studies I reviewed used smaller turbines.
And so if it was a larger turbine that was involved, such as a 14 megawatt that Skipjack is intending to use, that could have an effect on what the break-even point may be. Is that correct?
Yes, I think if some of the stated preference studies were to be redone with 14 megawatt images instead of 6, that could affect the results.
And as part of your study as to Block Island, so I'm referring to the 2018 study, which is attached to your direct testimony as Exhibit CPL2. You were only looking at data from Airbnb. You were not considering any sort of data as to tourism as it relates to house rentals or condo rentals or rentals from any other agency other than Airbnb, correct?
Well, I guess this is a nuance, but if house rentals or condo rentals were part of the Airbnb platform, they would be included. But we only looked at Airbnb data.
Okay. Yeah, and I should have clarified. I was intending to say any house or condo rentals apart from Airbnb.
We're in agreement.
And you did not conduct any sort of study as to whether individuals who rented Airbnbs in 2017, in the summer of 2017, if they in fact returned the following summer or any summers after that. Is that correct?
That's correct. Our study, the data for our study go through 2017 and then stops.
And your study was only looking at Airbnb rentals for one summer after the construction of the Block Island turbines, correct?
That's right. The period of our study included the summer of 2017, the full summer, but that was the only one.
And it's accurate that representatives of Airbnb, they visited Block Island around early 2017 in an attempt to increase the number of Airbnb listings, which could have been a reason for an increase in Airbnb rentals. Is that correct?
Two-part answer. So yes, we received the information from some tourism official from Block Island. They told us about this visit, and by us I mean myself and Andrew Carr Harris, my co-author. So they told us about this visit from Airbnb executives or folks who are employed there to get more properties, specifically hotels and bed and breakfasts, onto their platform. So that's a yes. And then your second question, can you remind me?
I mean, I think it was all sort of one and the same. I mean, just following up on that. So it could be that the reason for an increase in Airbnb rentals that summer of 2017 was due to this push from Airbnb, and it had nothing to do with the fact that there were turbines that had been constructed the year before, correct?
We were certainly concerned about that. We did not want that to influence our results, and that's why we excluded any property that came onto the platform post-construction was excluded from our study. And so any effect that these Airbnb consultants had on bringing new properties on, we exclude that activity. So we took our best measure to mitigate that possibility, and I think that certainly impacted the results, and I think we made the right choice.
And you would agree that the long-term trajectory of your study could possibly be different in terms of the tourism at Block Island? Is that correct?
It is correct. We only study one summer, and we saw large increases in tourism. That could change over time. It could become muted. It could stay the same, but it could change.
And you have not done any sort of study as to, or any sort of research as to property value impacts on Block Island, is that correct?
I have not completed any research. I have ongoing research that's currently being worked on with a graduate student here at the University of Rhode Island, but the results are still preliminary and we have not even submitted the paper to a journal. So it's incomplete as of yet.
So you're not prepared to draw any conclusions based on that study as of now?
I think it would be premature is the best way to state it. It would be premature to draw conclusions because of where it's at.
And as part of your study, you didn't do any sort of survey of individuals at Block Island to determine what led them to even visit Block Island in June or July of 2017, correct?
No, I did not do any survey. Some of the literature I review has done surveys of Block Island visitors, but myself, no.
So you can't say for certain that the individuals who rented Airbnbs in the summer of 2017 at Block Island were being drawn to Block Island because of the turbines?
No, I cannot say that.
And it's correct that there were few Block Island Airbnb properties that were part of your survey that were actually in the direct viewshed of these turbines, correct?
I don't have an exact number of how many properties had viewshed, but I do think it's accurate that it's a small proportion.
So what we're saying is a large number of the Airbnb properties were actually on the other side of the island from where these turbines are, is that correct?
I do not have a sense of the spatial distribution of the properties in our data, but I think given my knowledge of the geography of the island, I'm comfortable saying a small number had, a small proportion had direct viewshed.
In your study, it did not capture any sort of behavioral responses of single-day visitors, correct?
No, so we are capturing only overnight guests.
And you have not yourself done any sort of studies or surveys as to the Ocean City rental market, correct?
No, I have done no original research related to Ocean City rental market.
And you have done no surveys of Ocean City vacationers or property owners to see their opinions regarding Skipjack's proposed projects or about wind turbines in general, correct?
No, yes, it's correct. No, I haven't done it.
And you've not done any sort of impact surveys regarding possible property value impacts in Ocean City, or any sort of tax revenue impact studies related to the Skipjack projects, correct?
No, I haven't.
Dr. Erling, I do not have anything further. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Coran, any redirect?
Just quickly, Your Honor. The Council for Ocean City, Dr. Lang asked you about whether or not you've done any original research in connection with Ocean City. Were any of the materials that you reviewed as part of your literature review, did they cover the area that encompassed Ocean City?
They did. Two studies specifically. Hold on a sec. Let me get the exact. I'm going to refer to my testimony. So on page 17, I discussed the Sarah T. Hughes Field Politics Center at Goucher College survey. That is specifically, it's a survey of Maryland residents, specifically about Ocean City visits. And then the second study is the Parsons and Firestone study, referenced or attached as an exhibit by Mayor Meehan. And the Parsons and Firestone study surveys respondents all up and down the East Coast about many destinations, one of which is Ocean City. It's actually one of the most popular destinations that they find in their survey data.
Thank you. Your Honor, that's all the questions I have.
Do the commissioners have questions of this witness? Commissioner Linton.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Dr. Lang. I just had one clarification question. On page 7 of your testimony, you mentioned the importance of using the same properties in your study across the full period of time that you were looking at these properties. During that same period of time, it was fairly well known that Airbnb had a significant increase in users. So did you have a means to keep that number or to address that number as part of your analysis?
Commissioner Linton, your question was slightly unclear. You said there was an increase in Airbnb users? Is that what you said?
Yes, members. They
Members.
were attempting to get more people who would rent.
Of landlords who had their property listed. Yes.
No, I'm sorry. I mean, individuals who would like to go to Block Island, or people who would like to be a subscriber, if you will, and use the actual app to find a property.
I see. I guess I'm unsure that there was an increase in users. I think it probably makes sense given the increasing use of technology and the increasing popularity of finding vacation homes through these types of apps. So I'll take that word for it, take your word for it. How did we handle that? Well, we handled it because we handled it through our control locations. So we included Airbnb rentals in Narragansett and Westerly, Rhode Island, and Nantucket, Massachusetts. And so what we looked at, our study, was examining how rentals on Block Island changed relative to these other locations. And if Airbnb as a whole platform was increasing in usage, increasing traffic, that would be captured by the control locations, because people will also be using the Airbnb app to book rentals on Nantucket Island as well. And so the hope is that those control locations capture the time trends, a variety of time trends. And what we get with the increase in rental activity on Block Island is due only to the Block Island wind farm, that we've controlled for all of these other factors, and the only thing that changes is the construction of the Block Island wind farm. And so we attribute the increase in tourism to that.
Okay. And just so that I know, I've not actually been to Block Island. I know I've been to Ocean City plenty of times. So I know that during the course of the summer, there's all kinds of activities and events that are intended to attract people to rent properties and come down to the area. So do you know if there was anything unique or special that happened during that period of time that could have resulted in an increase in people going there? Or is it just a typical come on down to Block Island summer like it is every year?
That's a great question. To the best of my knowledge, there was no event that could have precipitated that degree of change, right? We see this elevated tourism activity over 2 months. And if there was some, say, a seafood festival one weekend, we might see a small blip there, but not over the course of these 2 peak months in the summer. So I'm not aware of anything. The tourism officials we spoke to on Block Island didn't say anything to that effect, but I can't be sure we actually asked them. But I know of nothing that would have impacted the results to that magnitude.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Lang. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Lang, good afternoon. Thank you for testifying today. I wanted to ask you, it's a little off, but while I have your expertise on the stand, and if you know, and if you wish to answer, I wanted to ask you about the Block Island wind farm. Commissioner Richard and I traveled to Rhode Island. We were nominal tourists, although invited by a trade group. We went out to the to the wind farm by boat, and it was fascinating to me. And I enjoyed it very much. But I've heard some stories, and I haven't been able to verify it. I haven't really looked too hard, to be honest with you, that the operating capacity of that 30 megawatt installation is not operating at full capacity. In other words, one or more turbines may be shut down or not functional. Are you aware of that?
I am not aware. I know this past summer 2021, all 5 turbines were shut down for a short period for routine maintenance.
Okay.
But the times that I have visited or seen them, I've seen all 5 spinning. Whether they're, I guess I don't know. I have some anecdotes, but everything I've heard is that they're all producing.
Fair enough. And I may have heard it wrong or had bad information, so I'm not really sure. I don't know. But we did observe maintenance being conducted on those turbines. We actually saw a maintenance technician rappel down a blade to sharpen up the leading edge of the blade. It was just fascinating to watch that. I'm sure Commissioner Richard would concur, and I know Commissioner Herman has also visited wind farm. So anyway, thank you, Doctor, for being here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Any additional questions based on the commissioner's questioning of the witness?
None, Your Honor.
Seeing none, Dr. Lang, you may step down.
Thank you.
Mr. Cran, you may call your next witness.
Yes, Your Honor. I'm going to switch chairs with my colleague, Mr. Gunderson, and he'll call our next witness.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Chris Gunderson on behalf of Skipjack. Before we call our next witness, we did just circulate around to the parties and to the Commission responses to the first 2 of the Commission's bench data requests. So I'd be happy to go ahead and deal with them now. One of them is co-sponsored by our next witness, Ms. Majola. So in case the commissioners have any questions, they could ask her now. However, recognizing that we just circulated them, I understand you haven't had any time to look at them. So we can also address these later.
Thank you, Mr. Gunderson. We do have copies of both responses in front of us right now. If the commissioners would, perhaps we just take 2 or 3 minutes to review, and then you could call your witness, okay?
Yes.
Okay, we will take a brief recess till 2:20 p.m., 4 minutes.
All right.
right, we'll go back on the record, having reviewed the two responses to the request from Commissioner Linton and Commissioner Herman. If Commissioner Linton needs more time, we'll have a break at some point soon. Thank you, Mr. Gunderson. You may call your witness.
Just right before I do that, would you like me to mark the responses as exhibits?
Do we need to?
No, I just want to make sure that they are entered into the record for the commission's purposes.
Right. Well, I guess we'll get them in, or at least the first one in, through witness Majola. Okay. All right. Let's mark them in that case. How are we marking them?
Your Honor, in the past, we've marked responses to bench data requests as commissioner exhibits, and we've also done it as party exhibits. We can do it either way.
Well, let's just mark them as what, commissioners exhibits number 1 and number 2?
Yes.
Okay. So the one in response to Commissioner Herman is number 1.
Okay.
Okay. Those items are marked.
Thank you, Your Honor. All right. At this time, Skipjack calls Ms. Majola to the stand.
Well, Ms. Majola, if you could please turn on your camera and raise your right hand for us.
Ma'am, do you swear and affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in the matter now pending is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Your witness, Mr. Gunderson.
Thank you. Will you please state your full name for the record?
Sipokati Majola.
And what is your business address?
437 Madison Avenue, New York, New York, 10002.
Who is your employer and what is your title?
Orsted, and I'm a commercial manager for the Skipjack project.
And on whose behalf are you testifying today?
Skipjack Offshore Energy, LLC.
Thank you. Ms. Majola, do you have before you two documents entitled, respectfully, the public and confidential direct testimony of Sipokati Majola, filed on August 25th, 2021, consisting of 21 pages of testimony in one exhibit?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would like to have the public version of Ms. Majola's direct testimony and exhibits marked as Skipjack Exhibit 14.
Marked.
And the confidential version of Ms. Majola's direct testimony and exhibits marked as Skipjack Exhibit 14C.
Marked.
Ms. Majola, do you also have before you two documents entitled the public supplemental direct testimony of Sipokati Majola and the confidential supplemental direct testimony of Sipokati Majola, both dated September 24th, 2021, and each consisting of 16 pages of testimony in one exhibit?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would like to have the public and confidential versions of Ms. Majola's supplemental direct testimony and exhibits marked as Skipjack Exhibit 15 and 15C, respectfully.
So marked.
Ms. Majola, were these testimonies prepared by you or under your supervision?
Yes.
Do you have any corrections, additions, or deletions to your testimonies?
No.
If I asked you the same questions today that are contained in your direct and supplemental direct testimony, would your answers be the same?
Yes.
Are the testimonies true and correct to the best of your information, knowledge, and belief?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, we respectfully move Skipjack Exhibits 14, 14C, 15, and 15C into evidence.
Seeing no objections, the aforementioned exhibits are moved into evidence.
Thank you. And before we turn Ms. Majola over for cross-examination, I'll just address what we pre-marked as Commission Exhibit 1 briefly. Ms. Majola, do you have before you what's been marked as Commission Exhibit 1, which is a Skipjack's response to bench data request 1?
Yes.
And was this response prepared by you and under your direction in addition to Mr. Brady Walker?
Yes.
And is this response true in belief to the best of your information, knowledge, and belief?
Yes, it is.
True and correct. Thank you. Your Honor, at this time, we would offer what's been marked as Commission Exhibit 1 into evidence.
No objection. Commissioners Exhibit 1 is moved into evidence.
Thank you. Your Honor, Ms. Majola is now available for cross-examination.
Thank you. Does U.S. Wind have any cross for this witness?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. U.S. Wind does not have any questions for this witness. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other party wishing to cross Ms. Majola, do the commissioners have questions for her? Commissioner O'Donnell. And then Herman.
Just a quick question, Mr. Majola. Thank you for being here today testifying. I see the 80-20 split for future tax credits or other benefits that your testimony offers. How would that be operated? Say you get an increase in the ITC. Is a new schedule developed for OREC prices and submitted to the commission for approval? How does that work should you receive an additional grant?
So let me just make sure I understand the question. So if an additional tax credit over and above what is currently considered in the business case were to arise, how the mechanics of the savings be returned to the ratepayers? Is that correct?
That's correct.
I'm not sure if this the mechanics have been established. This is something we would work with the PSC.
Okay, because you say the company has agreed to pass along to retail electric customers 80% of the value of any incentives received by either round 2 project and not included in round 2 application in your testimony. And so you haven't really thought about how that happens, how you pass that commitment along to the retail electric customers. Is that right?
Yes, to the best of my knowledge, I'm not aware of
okay, no problem.
Whether the mechanics have been put into place, but yeah, we would work with the PSC to figure that out.
Fair enough. I'm not trying to trip you up here. I'm just trying to educate myself a little bit about how this would work. So I don't know how that would work. So Thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all I have.
Commissioner, I have a follow-up based on your question. I thought the witness had answered it in her testimony, direct testimony, page 10, lines 14 through 16. Ms. Majola, you stated that Skipjack will pass along additional savings or costs to OREC purchasers in an adjustment to the OREC price if there was a change to law or policy or the ITC. Is that still true?
I'm sorry, what page are we on?
Page 10, lines 14 to 16. And the question in your direct testimony is, does Skipjack agree to hold harmless retail electric customers, OREC purchasers, and the state of Maryland for any cost overruns associated with either round 2 projects?
Yep, you're right. Correct. That is correct. I did respond to it, and we would still be committed to do that.
Okay, and I believe that was responsive then to Commissioner O'Donnell's original question. Thank you.
Apologies.
It was, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to do a follow-up to your follow-up.
Please.
So, Ms. Majola, did the company discuss whether or not that would be another proceeding with all the stakeholders taking a view of the new proposed OREC schedule, et cetera, et cetera? Have you talked about how that would operate?
Yeah, so everything in the proposal and I guess in my testimony has been discussed internally with the firm and gone through a governance process and approved. So
Okay.
yeah.
Maybe it's a question for us internally. You would make a filing with us should this part of your testimony operate, and then we would decide how to proceed with that filing. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Herman.
There we go. Okay, now it works. Thank you. Good afternoon, Ms. Majola.
Good afternoon.
So let's look at this chart from the exhibit that you prepared overnight. Thank you very much for doing that. You have that before you?
Yes.
Okay. So the cable factory, the Hellenic cable factory, that's at the bottom, 140 million. And none of this is confidential because this exhibit isn't labeled confidential. Is that right, Mr. Gunderson?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. All right, so that's there, and that is only if the commission approves 2.1, is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, just making sure. So help me understand the top category of expenditures. You noted that in your notes that the site investigation is already underway. Is part of that related to the skipjack project that's already been approved and underway, or is that
it's part
totally
of
incremental?
I'm sorry, but it's part of the Skipjack 2.1 project. So to ensure that we're meeting the schedule that we have in this proposal, we started the site investigations early this year.
Okay, and that's just for 2.1, not for the existing project
Yes.
that's already been approved. Okay.
This is for 2.1.
All right. So that's true of all of these factors, is that correct? All of these costs here?
That they're for 2.1?
In table 1. This is
Yeah.
all related to 2.1 and doesn't relate
Yes, correct.
to the already
Correct.
approved
This-
project. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thanks. I wanted to make sure I had that. So in your testimony, you say that contrary to U.S. Wind, you've committed, in italics and highlighted, you're committed to this level of spend. Can you help me understand why you're making that distinction?
Yes. Well, Ørsted is making a firm commitment as part of the Skipjack 2.1 of the 400 million. But to my knowledge, U.S. Wind has provided projections so far. So I thought it was quite important that we are saying that we will meet this in-state spend, and it's a commitment that we can stand by.
Okay, so just hypothetically speaking, you have under development and capital expenditures, your total is $127 million. If you only spent $117 million on all of those components, you're saying that you would spend $10 million somewhere else?
Yes, that is possible. That we are committed to spending this in the state of Maryland as part of the Skipjack 2.1 project. We expect to spend it all, at least for the first part, the development and capital expenditure on these items laid out here. But if one of these ended up, costing less, we would certainly make sure that we spend that somewhere else. But we are committed to spending this 400 million in the state of Maryland.
Okay, and over what time period would this 400 million be spent?
So the development and capital expenditures would be spent in line with the development and the construction of the wind farm. The array cable factory, we have plans in place to get started with that as soon as award, so that is operational early enough to deliver array cables for Skipjack 2. So that would be spent on that timeline. And then the spend from the Ørsted portfolio, I can't say at the top of my head the exact timeline for those spends.
Okay, so you're saying that the 127 million and the 140 million would be spent by 2026 because you would need that before the project was operational.
Correct.
And the other 133 million, you don't really have a date on that. You just think that over some time period you would be buying steel in Maryland to the tune of $76 million.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood all of that. I think that's all I had. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you. Do any of the parties have questions based on the resulting responses from witness Majola? Seeing none, thank you. Ms. Majola, you may step down.
Thank you.
Skipjack may call their next and final witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. We'll be calling Mr. Walker to the stand, and my colleague Susan Shipper will sponsor this witness, so I'll switch out.
Mr. Walker, when able, please turn on your camera.
Good afternoon, Mr. Walker. Will you please state your full name for the record?
Oh, Ms. Shipper.
Sorry.
On, please.
Sorry.
Mr. Walker, number one, we can't see you, and your microphone is off.
Oh, I'm sorry, Your Honor. I could see him.
Oh, okay.
And we're in the same room, so.
It looks like my video is on. Can you see me now?
There it is.
Okay, great.
A little bit delayed. Mr. Walker, please raise your right hand.
Oh, right.
Sir, do you swear and affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in the matter now pending is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You're a witness, Ms. Shipper.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Walker, will you please state your full name for the record?
Brady Walker.
And what is your business address?
1 Park Place, Suite 400, Annapolis, Maryland 21401.
Thank you. And who is your employer and what is your title there?
My employer is Ørsted North America, and my title is Mid-Atlantic Market Manager.
And who are you testifying on behalf of today?
Skipjack Offshore Energy.
Mr. Walker, do you have before you 2 documents entitled, respectively, the public and confidential direct testimony of Brady Walker, filed on August 25th, 2021, consisting of 22 pages of testimony and 1 exhibit?
I do.
Great. And has all the information that was initially designated confidential in the confidential version of your direct testimony now been designated or made public?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would therefore like to de-designate the confidential version of Mr. Walker's direct testimony and mark it as Skipjack Exhibit 16.
Noted. Confidential 16 has been de-designated and marked.
Thank you. And Mr. Walker, do you also have before you one document entitled the Public Rebuttal Testimony of Brady Walker, dated October 18th, 2021, consisting of 12 pages?
I do.
Your Honor, I'd like to have Mr. Walker's public rebuttal testimony, which was pre-marked as Skipjack Exhibit 17, to be marked as Skipjack Exhibit 17.
So marked.
Thank you. Mr. Walker, were these testimonies prepared by you or under your supervision?
They were.
And do you have any corrections, additions, deletions, or clarifications to them?
I do not.
If I asked you the same questions today that are contained in your direct and rebuttal testimony, would your answers be the same?
Yes.
And are these testimonies true and correct to the best of your information, knowledge, and belief?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, we respectfully would move Skipjack Exhibits 16 and 17 into evidence.
The aforementioned exhibits are moved into evidence.
Thank you. And I'll now move to the bench data request number 2 that was provided to the commission just before we returned from lunch. So Mr. Walker, do you have before you a document titled the Skipjack's response to bench data request number 2?
I do.
And so preliminarily, I'd like this to be marked as Commission Exhibit 2. Mr. Walker, was this response prepared by you or under your supervision?
Yes, it was.
And is the information contained in this response true and correct to the best of your knowledge, information, or belief?
Yes.
And so at this time, Your Honor, I'd like the Commission Exhibit number 2 to be moved into evidence as Commission Exhibit 2.
Seeing no objection, Commissioners, exhibit number 2 is moved into evidence.
Thank you. The witness is now available for cross-examination.
Thank you. Does U.S. Wind wish to cross this witness?
No cross-examination for Mr. Walker. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Counsel for Sierra Club.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Mr. Walker.
Good afternoon.
I just have a few questions for you. First, I'd like to ask you a few questions on the different facilities that Skipjack is planning to build. First, with regard to the Trade Point Atlantic facilities, I'm just going to treat them in my questions as kind of one facility, but if there needs to be some kind of distinguish between all the different building that's going on there, please let me know. Is Skipjack preparing or planning to prepare estimates of the emissions that will occur when these facilities are finished and operational?
We will comply with any applicable environmental regulations at that site.
Is Skipjack considering or planning to use electronic cargo handling to avoid the emissions that come from using diesel operations at these kind of facilities?
I can't answer that with certainty right now, but I will say that we continue to investigate technologies that are similar to the one you are describing.
And does Skipjack have any plans to monitor the emissions at the Trade Point facility once it is operational?
Yes, again, we will certainly comply with any applicable environmental regulations at any of our facilities located at that site.
With regard to the cable manufacturing facility, I believe Ms. Henry told me that that's actually owned by Atlantic Cables. Is that correct? Or going to be owned by them?
That's correct.
So could you explain to me the relationship between Skipjack and Atlantic Cable with regard to this facility? Is Skipjack just a purchaser? Are they part owner? What's the relationship between the two with regard to that facility?
Skipjack is a partner in supporting the development of this facility at Trade Point Atlantic, and we will also be a customer of Hellenic once the facility is operational.
What does being a partner entail?
Well, Hellenic is a longtime global supply partner of Ørsted, and we are very proud to say that as a result of developing or proposing to develop Skipjack Wind 2.1, we will help to bring Hellenic into the United States market, establishing their first ever manufacturing facility in the United States, and indeed the first manufacturing facility of its kind in this country. And so we are partners in that way, in as far as we are supporting the development jointly of this facility and of the larger offshore wind industry in this country.
With regard to the steel fabrication facility in Federalsburg, when does Skipjack envision this will be operational?
That timeline is largely up to Crystal Steel, as they will be the ones who are carrying out the expansion of their facilities and the acquisition of new equipment. But they have begun construction activity on that work.
And with regard to the operations and management base, that maintenance base rather, that will be in Ocean City, my understanding is that there will be a number of vessel berths at this facility. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Do you know how many, or do you have an estimate of how many will be at that base?
Subject to check, I believe there are two.
Two. Now, Skipjack has stated that this will be an emissions-free facility. Is that correct?
That is correct.
When I spoke to Ms. Henry, she was not aware of what kind of auxiliary power that will be used by the vessels when they were berthing at that facility. Do you know what kind of power will be used there?
There is shore power infrastructure that is already in place at that facility, and we would anticipate utilizing either the existing infrastructure or new infrastructure, depending on what's required. But shore power would be the method when facilities are not in service, or excuse me, when the vessels are not in service.
Next, I'd like to refer, Mr. Chairman, I believe that you should have a document that's Skipjack's response to Sierra Club and LCV's data request set 1. And it is hopefully labeled SC/LCV Exhibit 1.
Let's take a brief pause, Ms. Stevens-Miller. We're going to find that.
Well, I also only have one question from it, Your Honor. We can try to ask the question without actually having the,
Okay, well, if you could ask the question, please do.
Okay. Mr. Walker, do you recall that in the data requests, one thing I asked is whether there would be shore power at Trade Point Atlantic for any berths at that facility? And your response, and I'll read the whole response, was no, currently this technology is vessel specific with no ability to provide for a standardized approach. Ørsted continues to explore the development and potential deployment of this technology in the future. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. I have to admit, I'm confused by your response. Has Skipjack investigated the other 10 ports in the United States that actually provide for shore power for vessels such as container ships, reefers, and other large operations, in determining that it couldn't do it at this time?
I am not aware that we have carried out those examinations of those facilities.
And are you familiar with the California at-berth regulations, which require shore power for container ships, reefer ships, and cruise vessels?
I am not familiar with those regulations.
Thank you. Now I'm going to switch gears for just a moment. In your rebuttal testimony at page 10 and 11,
Okay.
you discussed a fund that was proposed by Sierra Club Witness Bose to help fund research, etc., with regard to offshore wind facilities and environmental effects. My question to you is, hasn't Ørsted supported this fund in New York, this type of fund in New York?
I can't speak to Orsted's support of the fund in New York.
I have no more questions, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Miller, Ms. Pardee.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Walker, at the meetings with the town of Ocean City and the communications with the town of Ocean City that are referenced in both your direct and your rebuttal testimonies, it stated that it was communicated to the town of Ocean City that the phase 2 or 2.1 projects would not be closer than 20 miles from Ocean City shore. Is that correct?
Yes, we had a number of conversations that included that topic.
And is that a commitment that Ørsted is still making, that those turbines in either project would not be closer than 20 miles from shore?
Yes, that is a commitment we have made.
And in the meetings that you had and the communications that you had with Mayor Meehan, as well as City Engineer Terry McGeehan, did request to you and to Ørsted that the distance from shore of these projects be increased, correct?
I'm sorry, could you restate that? You broke up a little bit there.
My apologies. At the meetings and the communications that you've had with Mayor Meehan and City Engineer Terry McGeehan, they had made requests to you and to Ørsted that the projects, that the distance of the projects be increased from shore, correct?
Yes, I'm familiar with those requests. I think they've made them on several occasions, yes.
Okay. And they had expressed concerns related to the view shed impact that the phase 2 or 2.1 projects would have for Ocean City, correct?
That is correct.
And Ørsted did not prepare any sort of alternative layouts for phase 2 or 2.1 in any sort of attempt to address these view shed concerns whereby these turbines would be pushed further back from shore, correct?
I don't believe that's correct. The layout that we have prepared, in fact, is in response to the concerns that were raised by Mayor Meehan and other town officials. We have made these commitments in consultation with the town, but we've made them voluntarily as a way to attempt to address those concerns to the extent that we can. The area of our lease area on the westernmost border is developable area that we are committing to not develop as a result of this commitment to the town of Ocean City, and we're glad to make that commitment to them out of sensitivity to the concerns that they have raised.
Is it your testimony that the phase 2 or 2.1 projects were initially going to be closer than 20 miles, but that they were moved further back than that, or moved to 20 miles in light of the concerns raised by Ocean City?
That is not my testimony. The projects certainly could have been developed closer to shore, but as a result of the commitment that we've made to Ocean City, the layout reflects 20-mile minimum distance to shore commitment.
Okay. And based on the layout that's in the application for phase 2 and 2.1, Ocean City still expressed to you continued concerns about that 20 miles, correct?
I believe, I certainly won't speak for them, but I believe that this commitment was well received. They did continue to note their desire for a further distance to shore.
And my question is, sort of further notes and requests were made, was there anything done by Ørsted to look at alternative layouts, discuss or show Ocean City alternative layouts whereby the project could be pushed even a mile further from the shore?
Sorry, you broke up there a little bit, but I think I caught your question. The layout we provided again was reflective of a commitment that we made to Ocean City and it's something that we are happy to do as a good a partner with them. We did not present any additional layouts of that of the proposed project.
And why were there not any sort of alternative layouts that were prepared or even looked at or considered after these continued concerns were made about the viewshed impact?
Well, there are a lot of factors that go into the development of wind turbine, offshore wind farm layout. Stakeholder concerns are certainly important factors in those discussions and decision making. Before this layout was finalized, these discussions were held with the town of Ocean City, and we felt this was the best effort we could make, given the totality of all of those factors to address the concerns of Ocean City and still present a technically viable project to the commission for its consideration.
Is there anything that prevents Ørsted from pushing any of these projects further from shore, but still staying within Ørsted's lease area?
Well, Ørsted, again, the lease areas were designated by the federal government, and Ørsted has the right to develop the lease area. Ørsted is an offshore wind developer, and we certainly intend to develop as much of the lease area as we can, subject to technical and permitting and stakeholder considerations. And so all of that was factored into the decision to make the commitment to Ocean City around the distance to shore.
And turning your attention to Exhibit 17, your rebuttal testimony, on page 3, lines 1 to 3, where there's reference to the O&M facility. And it states that the O&M facility is going to be built in West Ocean City. That facility is actually going to fall outside of Ocean City's limits, correct?
I believe, yes, that is outside the town limits of Ocean City.
And the town of Ocean City, they have proposed or discussed with Ørsted other possible investments in energy and environmental infrastructure that could be made within the town's limits. Is that correct?
At a very high level, yes, we have had some discussions along those lines.
But there's been no firm commitments from Ørsted as to any sort of additional infrastructure that could be brought within the city limits, correct?
There has been no firm commitment, but respectfully, there's been no firm proposal from the town of Ocean City. From my standpoint, and I believe the standpoint of the Skipjack project team, this discussion is an open one, and one we are willing to continue to have with the town of Ocean City.
Mr. Walker, I do not have any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Schipper, any redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor.
Do commissioners have questions for Mr. Walker? Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Mr. Walker. Thank you for being here and testifying today. So the company makes periodic reports to the commission regarding several things. Project overall, but a component of that periodic report is outreach activities, right?
That's correct.
And how did that come to be part of that periodic report? Can you remind me?
How did a report of our outreach activities?
Yes.
I believe that the intent was first discussed either in the original order approving Skipjack Wind Phase 1 or perhaps a related agreement to that order. I know it was also reaffirmed that we make these periodic reports in the commission's order from last summer approving the use of the GE turbine for Skipjack Wind 1.
Okay, and that's my recollection as well. So I seem to recall we had for me, it was rather disturbing discussion about outreach activities and an exchange in that regard. And I don't think the communications with the town of Ocean City, which is an essential and important part of our state and our economy, were in a very good state at that time. That's my opinion. But I think we clearly sent the message that we wanted this report. As you said, we reaffirmed it with strong language about those activities. And I want you to characterize for the commission, if you would, please. You reference in your direct testimony the meeting that took place in July 2021, and the combined projects commitment not to come any closer to Ocean City than 20 statute miles. Were you at that meeting with Mr. Hardy and the mayor?
I was, yes.
Okay. So generally, characterize that meeting for the commission in terms of its efficacy, in terms of its cordiality, and also the overall state of outreach activities as compared to last year when we had that rather disturbing, in my opinion, exchange.
Sure, I'd be glad to. Perhaps, the meeting with Mr. Hardy and Mayor Meehan, myself, Mr. McGeehan, I think was quite cordial. The mayor was very generous with his time, very understanding of why we were there to meet with him, and I think very interested in what Mr. Hardy had to say, just as Mr. Hardy was interested in what Mayor Meehan had to say at that meeting. And it's in fact just referencing the last couple of questions, talking about ways that Orsted might support certain initiatives within the town of Ocean City. That's a conversation that Mr. Hardy, I think, was glad to open with Mayor Meehan. It's a conversation that is still open, and we hope will continue. But I think maybe just taking a step back from the meeting itself, it was really a continuation of a very productive series of conversations, at least what I would characterize as productive conversations, that I and other members of the Skipjack Wind team have been having with Ocean City for some time now, certainly on a regular basis since the order in the turbine proceeding was issued last August. I believe that we have an open line of communication with Ocean City. My primary point of contact is Mr. McGeehan. I reach out to him on a regular basis. He knows he can reach out to me, and we're able to discuss issues as they arise. And it was in fact with him that I first discussed, for example, the distance to shore commitment back in the spring of 2021, and he carried that discussion forward on his end, and I on mine. And so he has been an excellent partner of ours. Mayor Meehan has been an excellent partner. And so I think we all recognize that that we may not see the world the same way, but we do have a productive relationship, and hopefully one that will yield some benefit for both parties for some time to come.
All right, thank you for that. So it'd be fair to say that things have improved since last year in terms of communications and outreach.
That would be my assessment, yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Excuse me, Mr. Walker. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Linton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, Mr. Walker.
Good afternoon.
I wanted to just make sure I had a clarification question answered for the commission data request number 2. And I will lean a little bit on commission data request response number 1 because it has the nice chart on it that breaks out some of the figures that the company is discussing in part 2. So I specifically wanted to focus on the second part of the data request response, focusing on the question of if Skipjack 2.1 is not awarded, what losses in terms of investment occur, and your response, basically going back to response number 1, suggests that roughly, using some lawyer math, about 2/3 of the $400 million investment would not be available if the Skipjack 2.1 was modified in any way. Is that accurate?
I'm not sure I would go as far as to say if it was modified in any way, but if it was, if the project was either not awarded or perhaps a smaller project were to be awarded.
Okay. All right. So that's fair. So using the language from the response, if Skipjack 2.1 is not awarded or awarded in a different form. So, and then from there, it goes on to point out that, again, roughly 2/3 of the $400 million proposed investment would not occur in the manner that we've talked about it here. So we're not talking about getting a smaller tower manufacturing facility, for example. There would be no tower manufacturing facility. Is that accurate?
That is correct. Yes. And if I may,
Sure.
with regard to the tower factory and the Hellenic cable manufacturing facility, these are investments that Ørsted is making, certainly in the case of the Hellenic facility with its partner here. But Hellenic will own and operate that facility. It's a major investment, their entry into the United States, the first facility of its kind in the United States. And so it must be designed, or influenced at least in large part by certain requirements as dictated by Hellenic in order to be viable. Now, we're glad to guarantee a certain volume to this factory, but it's not, to help ensure success of the venture as they begin to pursue future supply contracts. But it's not simply a matter of building a smaller cable manufacturing facility or tower manufacturing facility, because the goal here is to establish Maryland as a supply chain manufacturing hub for the entire industry, enabled by Ørsted's portfolio of projects. So the jobs last for the long term, the investment lasts for the long term. The state of Maryland, frankly, would not be well served by a facility that is not equipped to do that. And so we have, in sizing these, with our partners, sizing these factories, have done so in a way that it can continue to employ, can continue to invest, can continue to benefit the state of Maryland for decades to come.
Okay, thank you for that. So I understand that Hellenic is not represented here today. So your testimony here today is representing on their behalf that they would not look to invest here if the project is modified for Skipjack in the way, potentially in the way that you responded here.
I can't speak for Hellenic. I can speak on behalf of the arrangement that we have in place with Hellenic.
Fair enough.
Would not be available under the conditions that we're discussing.
Okay. All right, thank you for that. The other clarification question that I had was regarding the, let's see if I can find it in here, the $47 million that was already spent. Again, looking back at the Commission Direct number 1, the $47 million is under the site investigation section. It's I guess it'll be table 1, the first part, top there.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. So my question actually has to do with the other statement here in that same section that says other, and it's roughly about $10 million. I was just curious as to what does other entail? It's a pretty large number, so I just was curious as what's in there. And it's a specific number too, so.
We can certainly get that information from you. I think witness Majola would be best suited to provide you the detail that you're looking for there.
All right, I appreciate that. Thank you. And that's certainly, this is a Commission Data Response 1. So with Commissioner Herman's approval, I would ask that question for that clarification. That's all I had. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Walker, for your answers.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Mr. Walker, for your testimony today. I was interested in your exchange with Susan Miller. I believe she's representing the League of Conservation Voters, Sierra Club, and there may be some other environmental organizations. Are you you're familiar with your website, the Orsted website that's very specific to Maryland projects?
I am, yes.
Okay, and you're aware of the environmental stewardship pledge on that website?
Are you referring to the Skipjack Win 2 website or to the Orsted corporate sustainability website?
I believe it says usorsted.com in this particular paragraph. It's a 3-paragraph environmental stewardship. It says our teams in Annapolis. So I'm guessing that's the Skipjack.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
But it just talks about already working with local leaders, wildlife advocates, fishing communities, and other coastal and maritime stakeholders to address environmental concerns and develop mitigation measures. I mean, does that include organizations like the Sierra Club and League of Conservation Voters?
It does. Yeah, it includes organizations that operate at the national level, at the state level, and in many instances at the local level as well. We're very engaged with those communities across a wide spectrum of environmental issues.
Okay, and so you're working. So some of the questions she was asking, you're not surprised at all, and have been working with them to try to address.
Yes, absolutely. And a big focus of this work is that we obviously are supportive of efforts to expand the important mission that a lot of environmental organizations are on to preserve, protect, advocate, educate around all these important initiatives. And so we've established research partnerships to support this work. Orsted has, in addition to the ability to support significant grant funding, also the ability to bring significant subject matter expertise to bolster these efforts in the form of marine affairs, marine biologists on staff and other individuals with deep environmental backgrounds. And so we very much wish to partner with these organizations. We do partner with these organizations on a regular basis, and in many cases share the same mission. And so, as highlighted in some of the written responses to the Sierra Club and League of Conservation Voters data requests, we talk about our 2040 net zero commitment, for example. I'm actually a bit of late breaking news here. Very happy to report that an organization called the Science Based Targets Initiative just recently established a net zero standard. The standard is intended to align sort of corporate net zero targets with climate science, and has validated Orsted's 2040 net zero commitment against those standards. One of only 7 companies in the world to receive that validation, and the only energy company among that group to receive that validation. So it's something that obviously, of course, we're very proud of that, but it's a reflection of just how seriously we take this work, and these partnerships with organizations like the Sierra Club and the League of Conservation Voters and all of the others that you mentioned are critical to that mission.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And I'm sure you're familiar with a sustainable build out of green energy, Orsted Sustainability Report 2020.
Yes.
And I imagine you're committed to that for the state of Maryland. And I just asked because some of the questions she was asking specifically was about, commitment to decarbonizing, excuse me, the total carbon footprint. And in this, it appears that the company is committed to, phasing out emitting vehicles operations. And there's also, and I guess it's phase 3 about operations. It specifically talks about emissions from vessels, from vessels used in your operations, and addressing that, I guess, in a phase, scopes 1 and 2. So does the companies, are they committed to this this report and these commitments in this report?
Absolutely, yes, and it's on much of that report that our carbon neutral plan, the one I was just referencing, is based. What is Ørsted has a commitment as a company to become carbon neutral by 2025, but I think what is much more impactful is this 2040 commitment, wherein our entire supply chain footprint will become carbon neutral, and that involves a lot of the activities that you just mentioned. So yes, we stand by that report. It is a foundational part of Ørsted's mission to develop offshore wind projects, certainly, but to do so in a way that is sustainable and leaves not only no impact but a positive impact on the environment as a result of the development and operation of these wind farms. So, yep.
That's great to hear. So was there anything in the question, because she specifically asked about the proposed facility in Ocean City and the operations at not Sparrows Point, but Trade Point Atlantic, about these commitments to, vessel operations, to vehicle operations, to just general operations, and ensuring that the emissions are decarbonized, or I should say the activities are decarbonized. So was there anything she was asking you about that would fall outside the commitments in this report?
No, with regard to the operations and maintenance facility, the facility that we will be locating in the Ocean City area, that facility will be a zero emissions facility. The vessels themselves will be a zero emissions vessels. This is a technology that Ørsted continues to be supportive of, and that we intend to employ. But the facility itself will be a fully electrified facility built to the highest environmental standards to achieve that zero emissions target. We, of course, at Trade Point Atlantic, given the nature of the work that will be happening there, it's not entirely always possible to achieve zero emissions based on just the current technology that's available. But using sustainable design standards and whatever technology is available to us at the time that facility is developed, all of that will certainly factor into the way that work is carried out and the way the facility itself is designed and ultimately constructed.
Great. Well, no, thank you. I appreciate all those answers. I'm impressed by the commitment that is discussed on your website and in your reports, and so I look forward to seeing the company hopefully be successful in meeting these commitments. So thank you very much, Mr. Walker. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr. Herman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Mr. Walker. I really wanted to ask you in your rebuttal testimony, and I think you've covered some of this, but you say you don't believe that the $10,000 per megawatt is necessary because you've made all these other commitments, right? I don't see any of those commitments in the list that Ms. Majola gave us. Where are those commitments?
I'm sorry, I'm just looking for the page on which that is located. 9 to 10.
Oh, sorry, of your testimony?
Yes.
Oh, right, sorry, I have that. I can give you that. That's page 10 of your rebuttal.
I've got it. There are a number of commitments that are contained within our proposal, but I think this answer is intended to be somewhat forward-looking. We have included in our proposal really significant funds to support community partnerships and research and development partnerships. That is something that we are certainly well versed in and very much open to as a part of developing this project. They are contained in the bid. I don't believe they are reflected on the table, but that is responsive to your data request. But we can certainly provide a detailed analysis of what those funds are. I think it's important to note that not all of them have been committed, but rather set aside in anticipation of partnering with agencies like the Maryland Energy Administration, perhaps University of Maryland, local environmental organizations, and others to support ongoing work or perhaps new initiatives. But those funds are factored into the project's development budget, even though they may not be reflected on that table.
Yeah, I'm a little confused as to why they're not, because I thought I thought what I heard was that there was a $400 million commitment. And so, for example, your testimony references page 5-7 of the applications, where you pledge $1 million to establish a grant fund, which you reference in your testimony. But that $1 million sounds like a commitment, but it's not included in the $400. So I'm trying to make sure that we, when we're assessing this, we need to have in one place, which is why I asked that data request, in one place, the commitments, the actual dollar commitments that you have made. So do you want to amend that list, or is that list different than your $1 million grant fund?
That list is different. We can certainly supplement it with what we envision for community benefits agreements. The list that was provided, I believe, was an attempt to be responsive to some questions around the economics, the economic commitments, job creation, so on and so forth. So my apologies there, but we can certainly supplement it with these more community-based, environmentally based, research-focused funds that are set aside within our bid. You are correct. There is a $1 million ENGO-focused grant fund that is set aside in the bid. We are very happy for that to become a commitment should this project be awarded. And we have plans to invest further in these partnerships as well. And we can provide a detailed a view of that. They're just accounted for slightly differently than the economic commitments are. So my apologies for the confusion.
That's okay. I just want to make sure you get all the credit you're putting out there. And that's why I was confused when I saw the reference and I see the $1 million grant, and that's, I'm wondering if that's somehow different than the commitment that Ms. Majola was talking about, that saying that we've committed to these spends. So if there are additional commitments, I think it would be great to make sure that we have an accounting of them for you, so they can be properly considered. Thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Walker, I have a follow-up based on a response you gave to Commissioner Linton during his questioning. First of all, have you been watching all of these hearings both days?
I have, yes.
Okay. So you heard the extensive discussion Mr. Kane had earlier with regard to his methodology and ICF's methodology, and why he thought they were overly conservative at ICF in evaluating skipjack's cost, and why he thought that that all the customer class rate caps or impact caps were met by using his methodology. But ICF disagrees, obviously. So those are my words. It wasn't something that Mr. Kane said, but I think we can clearly see that. Yesterday, I asked your CEO, Mr. Hardy, about the ability of the company to sharpen the pencil during the pendency of these proceedings. And although it's not something the company wishes to do because it wants to rest on its application, he indicated maybe. He didn't preclude it. I don't think, and wisely so. And I asked Ms. Henry about how much margin there was to carve off some of the project to reduce costs. And she said, well, we can't do that at first. And I kind of said, well, it would be better than losing the whole project, right? She agreed to that. Yes, of course. But you seem to reply to Commissioner Linton today that any smaller project whatsoever would call off the deal. Are you speaking for the company in that regard? Did I hear that right? Or, I mean, are you saying there's no willingness at all? How did you respond to Commissioner Linton?
Yeah, it was with specific regard to the $400 million commitment. I am unable to, I mean, and I'm glad to clarify those comments. I am unable to describe the nature of what a commitment would look like to the state of Maryland if Skipjack 2.1 is not awarded in its current form or as proposed.
So Skipjack 2.1 is reduced by 3 turbines to so these numbers don't mean anything, but I just want to understand what you're saying here, that the $400 million investment commitment in Maryland is out the window. Is that what you're saying? Take it or leave it, all or nothing.
No, that is not what I'm saying. I am saying that it will not be in the same form as it is currently proposed. I think we could certainly have that discussion with the commission, but the company is unable to make the commitments in their current form to a project that is smaller. Doesn't mean no commitments. I'm not suggesting take it or leave it. We're just trying to be responsive to the question around the $400 million commitment.
So you're suggesting to me, as a commissioner who has to vote on whether or not your application meets the economic tests, that if there's any adjustment whatsoever to your submittal, that there's no longer a commitment to $400 million in Maryland. Even the slightest adjustment, there's no longer a $400 commitment on the part of the company. You are giving me a take it or leave it.
I'm certainly not. I'm not intending to give you that impression. That is a discussion as Mr. Hardy and I believe Ms. Henry also implied that we would be willing to have with the commission. It's certainly not our intention to present you or any of the commissioners with a take it or leave it approach as a result of the answer that we provided in this data request.
But you're saying no longer would be 400 million.
It may not, but I can't give you a firm answer on that sitting here right now.
Okay, well, you sounded pretty certain to Commissioner Linton, and I just wanted to explore that a little bit, see what you're actually saying. Because like I said to Ms. Henry, a slight adjustment with the same commitments might behoove you if it helps you meet all the considerations that we have from all the stakeholders and all the parties here. So I just wanted to make sure I understood what you were saying. Because you wouldn't want to lose the entire project, would you? Of course not.
Certainly not. And as, again, just to echo what both Mr. Hardy and Ms. Henry said, that door to have that conversation, it remains open. We don't intend to close that with this response.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Do parties have questions resulting from the commissioner's questions and the witness's response?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Mr. Walker.
Okay, based on, please identify which question you're following up on.
Based on the questioning by Commissioner Richard.
Proceed.
Mr. Walker, Commissioner Richard asked you some questions about the Environmental Stewardship Pledge and the Sustainable Report and other commitments OSTED has made with regard to the environment. But however, when I questioned you about Skipjack's environmental commitments, the only comment you would make is that you would meet applicable law, which are two very different things. So what I would like to ask you is, what is the commitment that you're discussing? Are you committing to meet the Environmental Stewardship Pledge and the Sustainable Report in Maryland, or are you just committing to meet applicable law in Maryland?
I believe the questions you asked me, and forgive me if I'm misunderstanding, but those were related to emissions monitoring at our facilities located at Trade Point Atlantic. And we will certainly comply with any monitoring requirements, but we are absolutely fully committed to the sustainability plan that has been outlined and is available on our website, and the goals that the science-based goals and approaches that are included in that plan.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all I had.
Thank you. I don't see any other counsel wishing to ask Mr. Walker any additional questions. Mr. Walker, you may step down.
Your Honor, just before Mr. Walker steps down, we don't have any follow-up questions, but we would request that the commission leave Skipjack's case open while the company continues to evaluate and respond to all of the commissioner bench data requests and questions.
Yes, no, your case in chief is open until this trial concludes. Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you.
Okay, before we conclude for today, are there any other matters that we need to address? Seeing none, we'll pick up tomorrow at 10 a.m. with U.S. Wind's case in chief, and we'll try to get through all 6 U.S. Wind witnesses tomorrow. So have a good evening. This matter is in recess until 10 a.m. Eastern tomorrow morning. Thank you.